We're joined by Adam J, somebody who needs no introduction, currently the CRO at Falkon, a revenue leader with immense experience in the SaaS world. Adam, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to taking off this episode with you.
Likewise. I don't know about the needs no introduction, but I appreciate the compliment. Excited to chat.
Adam, you've probably hired hundreds and hundreds of salespeople throughout your career, right? What are three things that SDRs or salespeople in general need to focus when they prepare for their next interview?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially with everything going on in the world today. I think, the top three for me, number one is research. You got to know who, and this goes both ways, right? First, to get the interview. And second, when you're in the interview, you have to know who you're talking to, what they're selling, a little bit about the company, the problems they solve. And that's going to allow you to frame the value that you're going to provide. There's nothing worse, and I had it happen this morning, where you get on the phone and you're interviewing someone, and one of the questions I always like to ask is like, so what do you know about Falkon? And the guy's jaw dropped. Conversely, I also knew that he didn't look me up on LinkedIn before he got on the phone with me. So that, certainly was an issue. Number two, when you're preparing for a role, you have to come with a clear articulation of how you've performed in the past. And that isn't necessarily just your sales numbers, right? Like if you're a BDR and you're going for a BDR role, or certainly now, no one really comes in as like, oh, I blew my quota out of the water last year, that's why I'm looking. I mean, no, the economy is what it is. Be able to talk through your numbers, talk through your performance, but specifically, how did they relate to the team? If you get on the phone and you tell me you only hit 26% of quota, my first reaction is probably like, wow, you suck. But when and the rest of the team only hit 18% of the quota, and PS, I could validate this and back it up through whomever you want to speak to, that's a whole different conversation. And you have to know how to have that conversation and talk about your numbers. And then lastly, I think when you're preparing for an interview, to me specifically, I want to know your sense of why. I want to know why you do what you do, why you want to be in sales, why you want to come work for me, why you want to sell to our ICB. All of that is so important. I interview different than most, though. I'm looking for the holistic picture of the person. I'm looking for where they want to go in the future, how I can help them get there. I'm looking for future leaders. My passion is really developing leaders. I certainly care about your numbers, but that's not the be all and end all story for me.
I really like that. I think given current situation with all these layoffs happening, I'm sure this is going to be really helpful for people who want to interview with you or any company for that matter. Given that you've been responsible for the P&L and driven revenue for companies over the last couple of years, what are some things that leaders like yourself, CROs, look at when they decide or when they want to purchase a tool for their company?
Other than how much it costs, there's a few things. I think that, ROI is certainly important, right? I need to understand if I'm going to spend X, what am I going to get back in return? And how quickly am I going to get it back? The best way to get me to buy technology is with a solid use case of how I'm going to earn my money back. I think the other things that I'm looking for is how can it reduce tech bloat? I worked at one of my last companies. AEs had 31 tools in their tech stack, and that was just the AEs. That's not even counting like what RevOps had, which was almost double that. How are we going to reduce tech bloat? Is this product addressing an unmet need? Is this something that I cannot get with something else that I'm using? Is this something that I cannot get by adding another module with another product that I'm using? And if it is, how differentiated are you? from that add-on module, because it's a lot easier to, I'll use our own scenario. It's a lot easier for a customer to add on forecasting with Gong than to buy Falcon. So we have to be able to talk through what the value prop is and the differentiators. I'm also looking for someone who makes the buying process easy. Make it easy to buy from you. Don't give me a 27-page, MSA and tell me there's no red lines allowed whatsoever. That's probably the quickest way to get us to say no. Connections and references are really important, but I'm not talking your case study that you're going to give me that you wrote that you had someone sign off on. That doesn't mean a whole lot. Put me in touch with someone that is a peer that I could speak to that's going to give me honest feedback, not someone who wrote you a case study. It is something that's critical. Now I won't buy anything without talking to people who are using it and getting their understanding. And then the real way to sell to me, and I think a lot of my counterparts as well, is instead of ROI, you really have to focus on what I call COI. And that's not a term that I coined. That's a Chris Orlob term, but it's cost of inaction. Like, what am I losing from my business by not using your product? Tying all of that together, how you're going to save me time, how you're going to save my reps time, and how you're going to increase our revenue, or how you're going to prevent me from losing revenue that I have now. That's the way to get me to buy your product.
I really like that. I'm a big fan of COI as well. And I have a question for you around COI very soon. So one of the things that I've been reading about, at least just in the last week, where there have been two sales leaders who have spoken about a trend for 2023, where they say 2023 is a year for consolidation, wherein they want to cut down the number of sales tools that their teams have been using from about 6 to 7 tools. Are they able to get that work done with just minimal number of tools? The work that 6 tools does, can it be done with 2 tools? That's the kind of thing that they're looking at. What are your thoughts there? How do you see that panning out in 2023?
Yeah, I think it ties back to the previous question, right? Is, it's tech bloat. We had a great 5-7 years where it's like, this tool is really great at this, and this tool is really great at that, and hence why we had 31 different tools. The money was flowing freely. Decisions were able to be made at much lower levels than they are now. You didn't have to go to the CFO. A VP of RevOps could sign a check and up to however many $100,000 and bring in the tool and mandate that people could use it. And what happened was a few things. You saw a lot of shelfware, right? Like, people would buy tools and adoption sucked. It never got used. You have 1, 2, 5 people using it in a 100-person sales org. I think that when you look at 23 and beyond, you're going to find that to be able to sell your product successfully, you're going to have to be able to help consolidate and eliminate the bloat. You're going to have to be able to bridge tools together and do things that other products historically would do. One of the bets that our founders made, and we just talked about this last week at our board meeting, is the old mindset used to be focus on one thing and do it absolutely perfectly. And that's how you're going to get a lot of funding, right? And how you're going to get a lot of traction. And that's shifted. Now it's be good, great, but be good at a lot of things. I hate to use the word, but platform, and be able to handle a lot of different aspects of the business. And that's what's going to get you to raise money and be successful. And I think that is going to be the trend. If you're going in as like some add-on or this one tool, you're not going to have a really good chance at selling. So I think that trend is here to stay. I think, in my opinion, that's one of the good things about the recession and about everything that's gone on with tech, is it's forcing companies to be better. It's forcing them to be more agile. It's forcing them to provide more value versus, the tool that does one thing that's brought in because someone knows someone who knows someone.
Let's talk about product demos a bit. You're probably 4 months into your role at Falcon right now as a CRO. You're probably demoing tools that are important to you. Have you seen something that's really off with sales teams today? When I jump on those demos, some things that people are not getting right?
So with demos specifically,
Yeah.
there's lots of things people aren't getting right. I think there's yet to be. I found like two people that I've done demos with that do a really good job. What they don't do typically is you get on a demo call. There's no discoveries done, right? Like we did the first disco call. I don't need to ask you any questions. I'm going to go right in. It's great to see you again. Excited to show you ABC. And we dive right in. And there's a few problems. Number one, every demo and every meeting, by the way, should be started with, hey, Anirudh, it's great to see you again. Has anything changed since we spoke last? Very first question.
Like that.
What's changed? Because a lot could change. Yeah, you know what? A lot's changed. We've laid off half our sales team. We have no more budget, and I expect to be laid off in a week, but I'm just killing time, so I'm here for your demo. Probably want to know that before I spend time with you. I am not implying that you're getting laid off. But what's changed? I think the other thing is that, and I said this first, no more discovery, right? The demos are literally, you're just going through and throwing up your product, and you're not continuing to ask questions to understand your prospect's pain point. And then that ties to the very last one of like, all you're doing is throwing up every feature that your product has. Somewhere in tech, we got this mindset that when someone comes on for a demo, I'm supposed to show them every great thing that my product does and go through this 30-minute dissertation of like every button that you could click. And what you're doing is you're talking yourself out of a sale because no one wants to see every button that you can click. Your demo should be super short, tailored exactly to your customer's pain point that you've uncovered through discovery that continues during that demo call. And when you highlight that, and you still talk about all the great things your product could do, but you know what? That's for you and success to work on. After you're onboarded, what I want to do right now is really address the critical pain points that you're having that are keeping your business from moving forward. And I'm going to show you how Falkon could do that and make that demo conversational. I was talking the other day with Scott Leese, who I'm sure you know, and he actually I sent him a recording of one of my demos, and I up. I went on like this 6-minute monologue, and he actually, slacked me. He's like, dude, like you're not Kevin Hart. You don't get a 6-minute monologue. Like you got to pause and ask questions. And it's a good reminder that even as a leader, like sometimes you lose sight of the time, you lose sight of what you're going over. It's gotta be two-way, and it can't be show up and throw up.
Yep. I know hundreds of sales folks reach out to you every day asking you to buy the product. Your LinkedIn is probably full of the DMs, emails everywhere, right? Or cold calls as well. Do you take cold calls?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
How do you not? So number one, there's two reasons I take them. I'll never in my life be a hypocrite. I don't believe in it. My integrity is all the I have at the end of the day. And I can't have a team that I tell to cold call if I don't answer the phone. Now, listen, if I'm in heads down work, no. But if I'm not, if I'm doing menial shit, or if it's, beginning of the day, end of the day, best times to get me for anyone listening, I will answer the cold call. Number two, I want to hear how other people are pitching, because if it's great, I'm sending that shit to my team.
Yeah. So you probably read that, right? There are a lot of people, SDRs post about it saying, you know what, you ask your SDRs to call, cold call them, but you don't pick up cold calls. So it's great that you actually pick up. Anything that's come up really interesting for you in recent times, something that you've been basically quite impressed in terms of a cold call or a cold email, something that's caught your attention?
Yeah, so no products per se, but I posted something about a week ago, and it was related to my travels and a restaurant that I went to with my wife, and a problem that I had. And someone, they were very specific in their outbound. It was an email. Very specific with that restaurant, with what I ate, with where I was and where I should have gone instead, because they're familiar with the area. And the fact that they were that personalized, they show me, you know me, right? Like old Samantha McKenna stuff. That they did that and then went into the pitch. And they tied it back to, basically like how their product will solve X problem, just like going to Y restaurant would have been better than, B restaurant. It just showed some personalization. It was lighthearted. It was funny. It got me to respond. I ultimately didn't need the product, but it got me to respond. The best demos, best outreaches that I get are actually through connections, right? It's real connections. It's someone who made a point to not see that, let me think of someone, not to think that Wayne Morris is one of like 9,000 connections I have, but they know that it's a real connection. They reference him in something that he said or our relationship. And that will get me to actually take the demo and listen. When someone I know is referenced and you've helped them or you have a relationship with them, you're much likelier to get me on your call. And that's why I tell all my AEs and my SDRs all the time, like, use LinkedIn Sales Nav. If you see I'm connected to someone, don't reach out to them blindly. Like, let me help you.
Yeah. I think that's a really nice thing to do. We probably get the same thing with Lakshman. We've had cases where I'm working on a deal. I need some help for that to be closed. The first thing I say, okay, if Lakshman's on the mutual list, I'm going to ping him on Slack and say, hey, I need your help to drive this to closure. And that's always worked, and I think that's a really good reminder as well, Adam. I know you're a huge advocate of earning the right to ask for a time or earning the right to talk about your product. What are some ways that SDRs can do that? How do they earn? What should they do? Is there a framework for that?
Yeah, it starts with the sign behind me, right? Like, it starts with tell me more. You can't go in and immediately pitch your product. You have to uncover the pain point first. And you don't do that through 20 questions and a fucking dissertation of like everything that's wrong. You do it by being a human being. Don't start off with, hey, Adam, I got one of these today. I see you're the CRO at Falcon, and because of that, you must be struggling with XYZ. You don't know what the hell I struggle with just because of my title. Titles are meaningless, right? At the end of the day, I can introduce you to executive vice presidents of sales that are individual contributors. I could introduce you to, senior account executives that manage a team of 10 people. Titles mean nothing. So I think in all of your outreach, you have to tie it back to a true pain point that your prospect is having. And you do that by asking questions. You do that by saying, tell me more. How's that impacting you? What does that mean to you? What would good look like? And you'll find, at least in my world, like I sell to sales leaders, right? Like it's, I don't want to say easy, but like sales leaders are much more willing to have a conversation with you than IT folks. Sorry to anyone who sells to IT folks. But if you ask in a genuine way and you're curious, they'll give you the feedback. One of the things that's worked really well for my team, surprisingly, is when we get a like no or no thank you, like opening up a little bit and being like, hey, like I appreciate that. I'm an SDR and I'm looking to learn. Like, what would you change about my outreach that could have, piqued your interest? And they'll give you that coaching. You're stroking their ego. And we've tweaked our messaging based on that, and it's resulted in meetings. But the best way to get someone to, to earn the right to talk about your product is by uncovering that pain and truly having a way that you could solve it, and only addressing that. Same with the demo, not addressing the 27 other things you could solve, just the pain point that you uncovered.
Right. So one of the things that we spoke about a while ago is you are more focused on COI over ROI, right? Cost of inaction. One of the biggest challenges for a lot of AEs I talk to, how do I quantify the cost of inaction? What are some good ways to actually find out, okay, staying status quo, this is what you're losing on. How do AEs actually quantify that?
Yeah, you again, it goes back to tell me more. You have to, this is good discovery. This is deep discovery. This is building that relationship. And I don't mean relationship in the sense of like, oh, we're friends. Building the relationship with your prospect. You have to get to know their business. What is their deal cycle? What is their ASP? How many reps do they have? What's their fallout rate? You have to, and you can't do it, again, you can't do it in the sense of 20 questions in the Spanish Inquisition, right? It's got to be conversational where you're really trying to learn and understand what their business is, what their business struggles are. You repeat it back to them, and you're taking copious notes, or whatever call recording software you're taking as an AI is taking copious notes. And now you're starting to build a business case. And the way that I do it is I use a Google Sheet, right? I go into Google Sheets, sheet.new, pull up a new sheet. I just learned that trick the other day, by the way. And you are starting to do the math. And I track it out with ASP, number of reps, deal cycle, how long is it taking? And like the problem that I could solve, what from a dollar perspective, if you don't have that, is that holding you back from doing now? Chris Orlob from Gong and pclub.io does the best job of explaining this and how to articulate cost of inaction. And again, like you'll see, I try to be fairly humble and not like come on these podcasts and say like I know everything. I've learned a shit ton from his recordings that I've incorporated into my team. But when you start to get super nuanced with the data, and that's the difference between COI and ROI, right? ROI, you're painting this arguably bullshit rosy picture that's you and someone in your marketing team put together on how much impact you're going to have. And we're going to increase your deals by 38.9%. You're not, but that's okay. Cost of impact is very, very specific, tied back to your customer. And you have to know those nuances of their business to be able to do it. It requires deep discovery. It requires smarts. And it requires time and proper follow-up.
Talking about good discoveries, to make sure that we uncover the right stuff. What are your thoughts in terms of should AEs just look at, hey, I'm going to qualify them by band, I'm going to consider them as an SQL, or is there like a specific framework that you would want to leave for the AEs to learn today?
So if you ever try to put me through BANT, I'm going to hang up on you. Everyone, listen, no one gets on a call with you to say, I don't have budget, I don't have authority, I don't have need, and my timeline is 6 years. Yeah. Everyone wants to feel important, right? I have budget, I have authority. Of course there's a need. I wouldn't be on the phone with you. And the timeline's always opportunistic. If the product works, we'll bring it in. You can't BANT people in discovery. Discovery has to be a two-way conversation. The way you talk about budget isn't, oh, do you have budget for this? I typically will bring it up like, as you guys have brought in new tech in the past, like what's the most recent tech that you brought in? Oh, it was ABC. Tell me a little bit about what that buying process looked like. What approvals did you need? How did you go about that? And that's where it's going to come in where, well, I ultimately, make the decision, but my CFO has to sign the PO and, he's really difficult. There's ways to uncover BANT. Yeah. Every company is different. We follow MEDDIC. I think for us, it's really important to understand, all the different aspects of MEDDIC and where they fall in the sales process. All I'm trying to understand in a discovery, and discovery is very different if a BDR is doing it versus an AE is doing it, but like, is there a need for the product that we could solve? Yeah. How do you purchase tech? Is there budget, or are we going to have to fight for it? And if we have to fight for it, and everyone now should expect to have to fight for it, no one's going to tell you that there's budget. Those are the things I'm trying to understand, not putting someone through some bullshit BANT, especially selling to sales leaders because they know
that. I don't know what else to say. I think that's really, really honest answer, right? So I don't think there's a better. I don't think there's a better person for me to ask this question. You've grown salespeople into leadership roles. You've been that person you're the one person that a lot of people look up to when they want to go into that role, right? Your recommendations say that as well. Someone who wants to grow into a leadership role today, sales leadership role today, let's say someone's on the position of a team lead today. What do you think they should do? What's the trajectory for them? What are certain things they need to take ownership in terms of ownership? How should they work their way up into a role of a VP of sales, or let's say a CRO?
You don't want to be a VP of sales or a CRO. Everyone gets enamored with the title. It's not that great of a job. No, I love what I do, but is it stressful. There's a few things. I think first and foremost, you have to lead without leading, right? You have to lead without a title. You have to be willing to help your peers share best practices. Reach out to your leader. hey, is there anything I could help you with? From a learning perspective. There's two types of leaders. I worked for one who would offload every project he had to someone on his team to do as, hey, this is how I'm going to develop you. No, it's because he didn't want to do it. And then there's the other leaders who will be like, yeah, man, I got a board meeting coming up. Why don't you hop on a Zoom with me and let me show you how I pull my metrics and what I'm looking at. I love it when someone's like, dude, you got a board meeting coming up in your calendar. What are you doing for that? I think that's really important. Taking it upon yourself to learn about other aspects of the company that you can perhaps have an impact in. That collaborative relationships are really critical. If you want to move into a management or VP or C-level position, you're going to need backing from more than just your leader. So build those relationships early. And I think, the most important one is don't be an asshole. And it's a very quick story. But I was very fortunate. I was the number one rep for a long time. A leadership role became available. I'm going to get it, right? I'm the number one rep. I applied. I didn't get it. It became available again in 6 months. I applied. I didn't get it. And I was mind. I couldn't understand why. We were at a national sales meeting in San Diego, and I'll never forget my VP of sales at the time, Whitney Parachek, sat me down. And she's like, do you want to know why you're not getting these roles? And I said, of course I do. Because you're an asshole. And this still sits with me to this day. I tell this story on almost every podcast. She's like, you're the number one rep. You have to tell everyone you're number one. You don't share any of your secrets. You think that what you're doing is that much better, that it's the differentiator and you can't share it with people. You're not nice to people. And every time that, you close a deal or you're number one, it's like, hey, I'm number one. I'm number one. No one wants to work with you. That hit hard for me. I don't want to be that guy. And I mean, this was 20 years ago, but now it's so the opposite. I try so hard to go out of my way to not be an asshole. That I think when you want to get promoted, at the end of the day, everyone doesn't have to like you. Chances are everyone's not going to like you. You have to be respected.
That's Adam J for you. I'll see you on the next episode of the SaaS Sales Whisperer.